welcome everybody to tonight's wonderful event. I would add one thing. We work very closly with students, and particularly we try to work with and defend our students on campus where they're exposed to extreme BDS and other forms of delegitimation. So we are proud of our record as academics and working in a very forthright way with our students. The other thing I would note, we also publish. CIGR has published a number of books on various topics, but we're very proud of the latest one, which is just out. This is the autobiography of our wonderful research chairman, Baruch Cohen. Baruch is only 98 years old this year. And we've been working together for 30 years. This is his memoir, his autobiography, and it's called No One Bears Witness for the Witness. Last week we had a special event launching this book in commemoration of Baruch and his wonderful wife Sonia. The book it's his memoir, it's his autobiography from the time that he was born in Romania, survived the Romanian Holocaust, made Aliyah to Israel, and eventually came to Montreal. And it includes, by the way, his wonderful, beautiful, and moving poetry. If you've read CIGR publications over the last 30 years, Baruch's poetry features again and again, and it's collected here. This book is on sale. You can talk to Machla at the table in front if you'd like to pick it up. It's a wonderful thing to have. I assure you that you will enjoy it and value it and learn a great deal from it. CIGR is 30 years old in the fall, and we will be having 2 galas. We're very active now in Toronto as well as in Montreal. And in the course of October, we will have 2 celebratory galas to celebrate our 30 years. And not only our 30 years, but we have a series of publications. Jack mentioned them. One is unique. It's called the Daily Israelnet Briefing. Comes out in email every day, just about reaching number 4,500 consecutive issues of the briefing. Haven't missed a day in over almost 30 years. So that's a remarkable thing, and we celebrated that last week. And we also, just to underline what Jack said, we have the finest, the only pro-Israel student publication in North America that comes out on a regular basis and that is respected for its research and its clear writing. It's called Dateline Middle East. There are copies of it on the table. Some of them are circulating. It is a remarkable achievement of a whole series of students over 30 years, Dateline Middle East. So we're very proud of what our little institute does. People think we're some kind of juggernaut. They think there's a huge building in Montreal somewhere teeming with hundreds of fervent Israel activists. We're actually a small group that just under 1 million that does most of the work. But we're very proud of it. We're very effective and we're very efficient. I too would like to thank Asaf Drori for helping make this evening possible. Asaf is a wonderful character, wonderful guy, and helps us out, and we appreciate him very much. I'd also like to thank the Shul, Tiferet Beth David, Yerushalayim. Well, tonight we're very honored, we're exceptionally honored, in fact, to have with us one of our truly outstanding and original academic students of the so-called Arab-Israel conflict. I call it the so-called Arab-Israel conflict. It's a phrase we shouldn't use because it implies that Israel is party to the conflict. Israel is not party to the conflict. The conflict is brought to Israel by the Arab states in the Arab world. It's the Arab campaign against Israel, which we should talk about much better. But Mordechai Kedar's groundbreaking work, his indeed iconoclastic work in the best sense, on the modern state of Israel in its lousy neighborhood, has had a remarkable impact on the current debate and on our understanding of the basic mainsprings for the enduring and frustrating struggle that Israel is engaged in. Mordechai Kedar was born in Tel Aviv to a Polish immigrant family. Speaking both Yiddish and Hebrew, in high school a charismatic teacher involved him in the intensive study of Arabic, a language in which he became fluent. Indeed, there's a sense in which Mordechai came to the attention of a larger public because of his crushing in an Arabic debate on Al Jazeera of an Islamic interlocutor wildly denying Israel's legitimacy and right to exist. And Mordechai, pointing out that the Quran is not mentioned even once, that Jerusalem is not mentioned even once in the Quran, fought back against this guy and said very clearly and very strongly in Arabic, Jerusalem belongs to the Jews, my man, period. And this debate became, got on video, went viral, and really played a key role in making Kedar known to a larger public. He worked in Israel's intelligence service for 25 years. He became a lieutenant colonel, and then very easily shifted into an academic career on leaving the service, with his PhD from Bar-Ilan University and a first book in 2005 on Syria called Assad's Search for Legitimacy. Today, he is a research associate of the Begin-Sadat Institute at Bar-Ilan, partially founded by our own Tom Hecht here in Montreal. He is a Middle East analyst for the Makor Rishon newspaper, and very importantly, director of a new and developing center for the study of the Middle East and of Islam. Mordechai Kedar's subsequent writings, books, articles, talks have ranged over various aspects of Islam and Arab politics across all of the important media, and he has written and spoken on the illegitimacy of colonially imposed statist regimes, on the manipulative role of Arab media, on Islamic gender and demographic issues, and on the trumped-up notion of the so-called Palestinians and of their illusory two-state solution. In fact, he has written a number of analyses on what he terms a much better 8-state solution. And Mordechai's 8-state solution is to break up the Palestinian Authority into 8 separate tribal and clan entities, which would solve most of the problems of the Palestinians, so-called, in the Middle East. Indeed, his emphasis on the key role of Islamic values in Arab societies and the basically tribal nature of their polities explains the instability of the Arabs' artificial, Western-imposed state structures. He has thrown a brilliant light on the underlying causes of the social, political, ideological, and economic backwardness that, outside of modern democratic, high-tech Jewish Israel, plagues the Middle East. We are then delighted to present Mordechai Kedar, who, as the Syrian-Iranian situation heats up, as Israel reveals its incredible purloining of Iranian nuclear secrets, a remarkable achievement of Israeli intelligence, and as President Trump is about to decide on whether or not to renew Obama's disastrous JCPOA nuclear deal that's coming in a few days. So the talk tonight by Mordechai Kedar is doubly relevant and doubly useful. He will speak on Israel at 70, what does the future hold? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Really, I'm afraid that such an introduction raises the expectations to heights which I'm afraid that I will not meet. Yet I still hope. First of all, I would like to thank Rabbi Freundlich, Marad Asra, and the host, the Shul Tiferet Beit David Yerushalayim, and of course the CIJR staff, Fred Krantz, Jack Kinsler, Machla Abramovitz, and Yuna Shapira, who only a few days ago gave birth to a little girl, and we wish her many hours of sleep every night.
Amen.
From this pulpit. I would also like to thank Izzy Stekler for being so friendly today. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of tonight is Israel at 70. Well, let me tell you, Israel is not at 70. It's only 70 years since the declaration of the independence, which came at the end of the mandate, which ended in mid-May of 1948. It was only a declaration. And declaration is not enough in order to establish a state. A state needs, especially in the Middle East, needs army, needs institutions, needs economy, needs infrastructure of a state, and all these things were built way before 1948. There are most of the researchers about the Israeli society actually point to the year of 1920 at the beginning of the state. Why? Because in 1920 the Histadrut was established, and the Histadrut was actually the first organized activity of Jews on Eretz Israel, which bred the Koach HaMagen, the defensive force of Israel, and Chevrat HaOvdim means the economical union of the Eretz Israel of those days before the state. So many things which made actually the infrastructure for the state started in 1920 and not in 1948. 1948 it was already, we had Knesset Israel, we had even a body of elected, freely elected, democratically elected delegates who actually shaped the public sphere of the Jews in Israel before 1948 already. So in 1948 nothing really happened on the ground except for the war which was declared on us one day after the mandate ended. But all the organs of the state, economic organs, and of course the Koach HaMagen, the defensive power, were established way before 1948. This is why the declaration of the state, or declaration of independence, was only a declaration, words, but the actual things happened way before. But 1920 also, it didn't start then. The Zionist movement started to be active more or less in the last quarter of the 19th century. Depends where, in Europe before, here later. And this movement started from zero. I would even say below the zero. Against all odds. First of all, the Jewish nation of those days, until the end of the 19th century, was not a nation. The Jewish nation were communities which lived separately from each other, some in Poland, some in Russia, some in Morocco, some in Yemen, Afghanistan, here, wherever you go. There were Jews, communities, separate from each other, divided, having very little, if at all, to do together as a nation. They didn't have common language even, because communities which lived in Europe spoke Yiddish in Eastern Europe. Western Europe, they spoke French or English. In Arabic-speaking countries, Jews spoke Judeo-Arabic. No, Judeo-Arabics in plural, because the Judeo-Arabic of Iraq is totally different from the Judeo-Arabic of Morocco. And a Jew from Iraq could not speak to a Jew from Morocco because they speak different dialects, very distinct dialects, and very far away from each other. The Yemenite community, until the mid-19th century, they were not aware that there are Jews in other parts of the world. To that degree, they were isolated, lived by themselves, had nothing to do with other communities because they didn't even know that there are other communities in other parts of the world. So Jews were not a nation those days. And every community, wherever it lived, had to struggle for life. In Eastern Europe, in the Arab world, wherever, to make living and to survive the paritzim, the dictators which we had to face in this Khmelnytskys. Hitler was not the first one to kill Jews. There were many beforehand. And those communities actually started to survive as communities, not as a nation, because they never had any unifying awareness that they are all one nation. Of course, we know that they are Jews, but they didn't act, they didn't correspond, and they didn't have anything to do with other, or most of the other communities. And this is to begin with. Now, try to convince them all that they are a nation, and not communities, to change their mindset, which was shaped along 19 centuries of exile, running away from place to place in order to survive. Jews didn't have, as I said, didn't have a common language. Jews didn't have a common feeling of to be together. How can you now initiate a feeling which will combine them together to one movement? This is totally impossible. Why? Why should they change their mindset? Not only this, if you try as a Zionist movement to concentrate yourself on Zion, means on the Eretz Israel and Jerusalem, this is also very hard, because Eretz Israel for those communities was in theory, was a direction of prayer, was in the prayers, "V'techezena einenu b'shuvcha leTzion." But it was never an actual thing which people took the carry-on, climbed in an aeroplane and went to visit. This is not what was until recently, until some dozens of years ago. Because there was no transportation which could take you and bring you back within normal time. Okay, of course, if you migrated to Eretz Israel, you moved there, you sold everything which you have, you kissed your family, and you went to Eretz Israel to no return. And you settled there. This is what, not tourists which come back and forth in El Al, which takes them 12 hours, and you're there, and you come back. So this was not the situation. And don't forget that Israel, the land of Israel was then occupied by the Ottomans since 1517. Means for many centuries, for at least 4 centuries, and the Ottomans did not look like people who give up on any land. So how can you talk about Zionism and establishing something in Zion, in Eretz Israel, when the Ottomans are there and nobody dares, at least in the 19th century, to mess with them? Because they are vicious, they are cruel, and you don't mess with such people. So this whole thing was in theory. How can you talk about Eretz Israel when this is under the Ottoman Empire or rule? So everything was against the Zionist organization. Not only this, even within the communities, they had opposition. One opposition from the ultra-religious side, which believed that we Jews should dwell in exile until the Mashiach comes and redeems us all and will bring us to Eretz Israel, will solve all the problems, and we will go with the Mashiach after him to Eretz Israel in a way or another. This is what ultra-religious circles believed, and you know what? Until this very day, there are those who say the same thing until now. The Zionism actually is aliyah b'choma, as I say, climbing the wall which the Kadosh Baruch Hu made around Eretz Israel, for you Jews to live in exile until I call you to come and I will solve the problems. The Kadosh Baruch Hu will take us. This is one side. And the other side of the Jewish community was the secular side. Those people who were part of the local ideologies, wherever they were, communists, socialists, nationalists, all kinds of ists, who took part in the intellectual, modern, ideological life of everywhere where they lived. In Soviet Union or in Russia, there were the communists. Trotsky was a Jew, and many others. And they led this communist organization because they believed in the fact that Jews should be part of those countries under the idea of achvat amim, fraternity of nations. We all should be here, and we will be friends with everybody. The Weimar Republic in Germany definitely embraced the Jews. They consider themselves as Germanim b'nei dat Moshe, Germans who belong to the religion of Moses. Germans, not Jews who are distinct to a different nation. Germans who are following Moses. That's all. So later Hitler came and told them what he thinks about it. But to begin with, this was the idea, to be part of the society where they live, because this is how it should be. And Jews, of course, excelled in every place. They were the best lawyers, the best accountants, the best violinists, poets, writers. Okay, and they became part of the cultural life of those countries everywhere where they. So now convince them that they are not communists anymore, they are not socialists, they are not, the best part of society. No, they should take the Valiske and go to Eretz Israel. Why the heck? Why should we uproot ourselves ourselves from a place where we live for centuries and we flourish and we are part of the society. Why should we separate ourselves from our environment, which embraced us so nicely through the centuries? Eretz Israel, not only it was under the Ottoman occupation or Ottoman rule, large parts of the country were swamps. The whole Emek Israel, which is like 14% of the whole country, was one giant swamp. All the area of Hadera, in the coastal area, swamps. Now, those swamps were with Anopheles mosquitoes, which brought malaria. And in malaria, if you are sick with malaria, it's not sgula le'arichut yamim. It's not something which you live long with. Okay? Usually you die in giant agonies and high fever. Who the heck is the machine to take himself from wherever he lived and to go to Eretz Israel under the Ottomans and to deal with malaria? Maybe exposed to malaria and maybe die from malaria, and people died. So everything in the Jewish life of the late 19th century was against the Zionist movement, from within the communities and from outside. Then came the First World War, and this was the opportunity. First World War, of course, the first conference of the Zionist movement was in 1897, when it was like 20 years before the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Still, they were speaking about buying land, or already the Baron, the Rothschild, is buying lands and settling Jews in Zichron Yaakov, Rosh Pina, Rehovot, Rishon LeZion, with 2 wineries in which produced kosher wine, in Rishon LeZion and Zichron Yaakov. Okay, this was the beginning, before the Zionist movement started to act in more organized way. And they had the conference in Basel in 1897, and here something should be remembered, that the Basel community did not take part in this. They didn't want to have anything to do with this, because they didn't believe that this Zionist organization, Zionist movement, has some kind of prospect to succeed. So the local Jews were against it. So we should remember it later. Then came the First World War with the opportunity to establish something on Eretz Israel, because the Ottoman Empire was defeated and Britain and France took the Middle East, occupied the Middle East, and then came the negotiations between Weizmann and Lord Balfour, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of His Majesty's government, and they succeeded to come to this declaration in November of 1917, that the government of His Majesty sees in a positive way the quest of the Jews to establish a national homeland, or national home on Eretz Israel. They didn't mention a state yet, but national homeland for the Jews in Eretz Israel. And this still was a document between the government and the movement. There was nothing on any international arena. But what happened after the First World War is another thing which enabled it, is that the first time in history the world establishes an international organization which was meant mainly to prevent atrocities like the First World War. And this was the League of Nations. The League of Nations. This was the first time that an organization like the United Nations, which today is, appeared in the global arena. Because until that day, after the First World War, never the world behaved in some united agenda as it is in this organization. And look, we today live in a world which is run more or less, but by the United Nations. Well, for us, the United Nations is the umbrella organization which is supposed to arrange life of nations all over the world. And we see it as for granted. Well, it was not the situation before the First World War, but there was never such an organization, an umbrella organization of nations, which is aimed at organizing the life of nations in order to prevent atrocities like wars and so forth. So the first time in history, the world establishes the League of Nations, and the Zionist movement understands that this is the opportunity to take advantage of this umbrella organization in order to divert this document between His Majesty's government and the Zionist movement to be a document on the level of the international arena. And of course, in 1920, April, the Sanremo Convention in Italy, the League of Nations decides to embrace the Balfour Declaration. And this is the first time which the world, not only the British government, the world organized in the League of Nations, decides to give Eretz Israel to the Jewish people. And this was, in my view, the first time in history since the declaration of Koresh, after the destruction of the first temple, to allow the Jews to come. But then it was only his decision, Koresh, who controlled half of the world, which was known in those days. But this time, the League of Nations, the umbrella organization of the whole world, now decides to give Eretz Israel to the Jews as their own. And this is very important because until this very day, these decisions of the League of Nations are valid, are international documents according to Article 80 of the Charter of the United Nations. Means the second umbrella organization, which was established after the Second World War, the United Nations, actually embraced the decisions of the first umbrella, the League of Nations, and until this very day, these decisions of the League of Nations are still valid, and so far, the only nation which the world recognized as a nation which Eretz Israel belongs to is the Jews. Nowhere it says anywhere anything else and mentions any other nation. And this we should bear in mind when it comes to legal issues. And here I must draw your attention to another organization here in Canada, Canadians for Israel Legal Rights, CILR, which operates usually in Toronto, headed by Goldie Steiner and the late Solomon Ben Zimra and some other activists who are working day and night in order to establish the awareness of the Israel's legal rights based on all these international documents, which are very important to our story. Later, if we continue with the time, Jews come to Eretz Israel with increasing numbers, Aliyah Rishona, Aliyah Shniya, first Aliyah, the second Aliyah. Jews purchase lands from Arabs who sell the lands, usually the swamps, which were very cheap. Who wants to buy a swamp? But Jews, with the price of their lives, believed in this project, and they bought the swamps and dried them up in order to turn them into fertile land, as the Emek Israel is in the area of Hadera as well. And here I must mention another thing. The revivalism of the Hebrew. Because the Hebrew as a language was served only as a liturgic language through 19 centuries. Since its destruction, Hebrew was served only for Talmud Torah and for prayer. But Jews in daily life, in most cases, didn't understand what they say. They didn't understand what they say in Talmud and especially the Tefillah, because Hebrew was, I would say, the Musaic language. And the Zionist organization succeeds to take it back out from the museum, from the display, and turn it into the language of the sciences, the language of politics, the language of the garages, and even the language of the thieves. Yes, we have some of those as well. Like every normal nation in the world. And this is unprecedented in the world, the whole world, that a language which was dead for 2,000 years comes back to life. And this is something which we should bear in mind. But not only the language. What happened in Israel is that Jews came from all over the world, from Hungary and from Iraq, from Morocco, from Canada, from South America, South Africa, from all the places, in order to constitute a new nation, the Israeli nation. Means the Zionist organization, I would say, one of the most difficult missions, if not the most difficult mission, is not only to take Jews out of exile, but to take exile out of the Jews. Means that you don't define yourself anymore as Iraqi, Moroccan, Polish, American, Canadian, South American, and so forth. You define yourself as Israeli. Period. Nothing but. For this you have to change your language. And really, people who came to Israel at the beginning, the 20s, 30s, it is documented how families who came from Germany, from other places, spoke Hebrew at home artificially, almost, in order to speak Hebrew. Because this was a value. They saw the value of speaking Hebrew and give it to their children. And it worked. Big time. Because not only Israelis today are distinct from the way of thinking in the Galut, we also constitute a new economy, new ways of economy. Because Jews, when the Jews were cultivating were in agriculture, very rarely. Jews were combatants. Jews were soldiers or officers in the army. Okay, in the French army, there was some typhus, for example, and in the German army also. But usually Jews they were not trusted to be loyal to the country, so they were more or less, they didn't trust them to be soldiers. And here you have to fight since day one. Since the first day of the state, or even before, you have to fight. How do you turn a Jew to a fighter? Somebody who carries a gun, and when he has to shoot, he shoots. He doesn't talk. Means, if you start to talk, you get killed. So you have to shoot first. Because in some cases in the Middle East, if you are the second to shoot, you don't shoot anymore forever. Because you are dead. Okay? So you have to adjust your mindset to the customs and the culture of the Middle East if you want to survive in such a violent area, which shoots before it talks, as we see today, unfortunately. So this is what I mean by taking the exile out of the Jews and to turn to the Jew to somebody who is willing to fight for his life and yet to work as well. And this is how those people who were in the kibbutzim and moshavim, during the day they were cultivating the earth, and during the night they were guarding, and if needed, they fought as well. This, I would say, is the wonder. Because if you take the situation of the 19th century as the beginning, as a starting point, and you see what Israel achieved in its first years already, thank you so much. I don't know how to describe it, if not a miracle. Because it was a success against all odds. Nothing supported it in the beginning. And the Zionist movement succeeded. With disputes, with shortcomings, with all kinds of things. Yes, you can have criticism about everything. Yet, the bottom line is that the state succeeded to be declared. And yes, many people in the world were afraid that this war of 1948 will be a mass massacre of Jews after the world already has witnessed the mass massacre of the Holocaust between 1941 and 1945. And here I must give a little footnote. For all the nations in the world, only one nation had some obligation to save Jews. This was Britain. Because according to the mandate which was given to the British in 1923, they were supposed to enable Jewish migration to the land of Israel. No other country had some kind of obligation to save Jews. You might remember the ship St. Louis, which was sent by the Germans with some 900 Jews on it as some kind of litmus paper to see which country will accept Jews. They went to Cuba, they went to the United States, they went even to here. And the Minister of Migration here in this country said that none is too many. None is too many. Okay? So Jews were rejected. So they went back to Hamburg, and later they were exterminated, because no country wants those Jews. The Nazis, from the beginning, did not want to exterminate the Jews the way they did. They wanted to deport them, they wanted to send them away, in order to clean Europe and to turn Europe into Judenrein. Judenrein. It took them 2 years, until 1941, until the conference of Wannsee, to understand that the world will not allow Jews to migrate to other countries, and Britain especially does not let them to come to Eretz Israel. This is the point when they started to think about industrialized extermination of Jews. Ladies and gentlemen, had the British Empire allowed Jews to come in big numbers, according to their obligation in the mandate, to allow Jews to go to Israel, if they allowed this mass migration of Jews from Europe especially to Eretz Israel, there would not be a Holocaust in such a magnitude. Yes, Jews were killed, were burnt in barns, were burnt in synagogues. Yes, we definitely know this, especially in the beginning of the war. But gas chambers and crematoria, as we saw after 1941, very possibly the Nazis would not establish, would not build, would not use, unless the British allowed the Jews, if the British allowed the Jews to go to Eretz Israel. And for some unknown reason, Jews today do not walk around with this notion that Britain took a passive role in the Holocaust. Look, I'm not trying to reduce even 1 gram from the responsibility of the Germans. No way. They were responsible, fully responsible for this Holocaust, this dreadful Holocaust as it was industrialized, as it was. Yet, if the British allowed migration of Jews from Europe to Eretz Israel, very possibly there wouldn't be such a giant Holocaust as it would in such magnitude. Bear it in mind. However, when Jews came to Eretz Israel, especially after the war, they were as far as could be from people whom you can build a state by. Ben-Gurion described them those days as avak adam, human dust. Human dust. People who came with what? With a shirt, nothing but, no money, no skills, which you need in a country. You know, the first pilots of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, were speaking English because they were either British, like Weizmann, like Ezra Weizmann, and American volunteers who came to fly Messerschmitts, who we succeeded to buy from the Germans and from others, and to try to have some kind of an air force against the Arab air forces which attacked Israel and bombed Tel Aviv as well. And the first language which was spoken in the Israeli Air Force was English, because most of the pilots were from the United States. 1,400 volunteers came to Eretz Israel as a mahal. Mahal means meguyasei chutz laaretz, the recruits from abroad who came to help the Jews, and not all of them were Jews. Many of them were Christians who believed in this and came to fight in Eretz Israel, and Israel should forever remember the sacrifice of those, because some of them really got killed in the wars in 1948 in the war. So yes, we were supported by Jews and non-Jews alike, and we succeeded to overcome this independence war with a price, heavy price, of 1% of the Jewish population in Eretz Israel. 6,000 people out of 600,000 got killed in the 1948, but at the end of the war, Israel succeeded to force not recognition on the Arab border, but to draw ceasefire lines. We never had borders those days. What we had is ceasefire lines, which are much lower in the international arena as lines. See, only ceasefire. no recognition, no statehood, no borders, nothing, because borders is something which a state has. But those countries, the Arab countries, never recognized the legitimacy of the state of Israel. This is why they could not, they wouldn't name those lines as borders, only ceasefire lines. Well, ceasefire. And this is a little definition, but very important in the context of the unwillingness of the Arab world to recognize Israel. However, with the years, Israel succeeded to achieve peace, even with Arabs, with the two Arab countries, Egypt in 1979 and Jordan 1994. Means not only Israel succeeded to survive, but Israel succeeded to force itself on the Arabs to a degree that they finally came to the conclusion that Israel is invincible, and this is why they should give peace to Israel. Of course, Middle Eastern peace, because in the Middle East, peace is only a temporary thing, which states are given only because these states are too powerful to be defeated. Once they are weak, all the peace agreements are evaporate. This is the culture of the Middle East. It's not like in Canada, it's not like in Europe. In the Middle East, we talk about another culture, and this is the culture of the Middle East, based on Islam, based on other things as well. So, Israel succeeded to have peace with two of its opponents. Okay, so we had Egypt as an enemy until the peace, we had Jordan as an enemy until the peace, and we had Syria as an enemy until there is no Syria anymore recently. So, because Syria today is taken by other countries, by Russia, by Iran, by Turkey, and we also took part of Syria 51 years ago. So, this is what I'm saying. Israel against all odds. No, the Jewish people, against all odds, succeeded to re-establish its own country after the destruction of the first country, which was or the second temple, which was until the year of 70, succeeded to come back to its land, succeeded to remain loyal to its religion, loyal to its culture, loyal to its even language, which was in the museum for 19th centuries, loyal to its identity, and renewed its loyalty to the land as well. And this is actually what the state of Israel is, to renew the loyalty to the land, to go back to the land, to dry all the swamps, and yet to settle in the country, and to rebuild or to renew itself, to be again an Israeli nation after it spent 19 centuries in exile. And this is actually what the state of Israel is. It's the biggest project of the Jewish people since the destruction of the Second Temple in the year of 70 CE. I don't remember, I don't know about any other project which is bigger than this project of the Jewish people, because many Jews supported it with a blue pushkin, with a coin every week, or every Friday, or everyone according to his ability. And Tommy Hecht with his support, and many others who supported with money, even if they remained in exile. Yes, they supported. And look at this, children, sons of people who live here go to spend 3 years in the Israeli army. I think that almost everyone knows about somebody's son or daughter who after high school or after college went to Israel to spend 3 or 4 or 2 years, depends if it's a girl, 2 years, in the army, came back or didn't, never mind. But they took the carry-on and they went to Israel to be fighters, in spite of the weather, in spite of the war, in spite of everything. And yes, there are some casualties from those as well, and lone soldiers, yes, once in a while we have to bury them with big tears. So this is what I'm saying, but the biggest project of the Jewish people, not only the Israelis are those who are there, but the Jewish people which stand behind this, and with the other states in the world, definitely support this, and this is why the state of Israel still exists. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't ignore the challenges. We definitely have challenges. First of all is the Iranians. Iran until recently, until 2 years ago, was a state beyond Jordan and beyond Iraq. Means like 1,000 kilometers between us and Iran, very, very wide buffer zone which protects us from the Iranians. Iraq and Jordan in the middle. Well, recently we have some news. Iran became our neighbor because of the deterioration of Syria, because of the lawlessness in Syria, because of the massacres in Syria, and because of the fact that Syria is a dysfunctional state. All kinds of states were sucked into the vacuum inside Syria. So Russia took the coastal area, the Turks took the northern part of Syria, the Iranians settled in the heartland of Syria. They are already today, they operate 6 air bases by themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, to run an air base, it means that you can bring whatever you like by the air. You know, today there are cargo airplanes which you can open the whole front up, and you can stick into the airplane whatever you want, even a very, very long pipe named the missile. So you can put one missile into the airplane, close the front, and fly it to Syria. It takes 2 hours, and the missile is in Syria. You can go back after 2 hours again. So within a day, one airplane can bring 4 or 5 missiles. Imagine if they have 10 of those, and they worked for a whole month, how many missiles already potentially are in Syria brought from Iran. So now we have a neighbor named Iran, which has a whole army in Syria, and they do in Syria whatever they like, unless Israel targets them once in a while. Whether Israel announces it or not, it's a different question. So far, Israel stung the Iranians sometimes in Syria. One of the recent attacks was on Saturday, 10 days ago, with a big blast which almost was like an earthquake in Syria, when some storages of missiles like those were attacked by apparently Israel. Israel never admitted. And okay, it will take them a while until they renew it. So whoever thinks that the problem is solved, forget it, because they will swallow their saliva and continue to bring missiles more and more and more in order to target Israel. And the Iranians definitely have very clear intentions to take Israel over, and I know it because they write it. I myself, I have a document which was published by Hezbollah all over since 2006, where Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, says very clearly that the Iranian people's strategic depth extends all the way to North Africa, the Middle East, Palestine, Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. And if you look at the map and you combine all these areas which he mentions by name, you can see this is exactly Mehodu ve'ad Kush. Exactly the state in the Megillat Esther, which actually it was the ancient Persian Empire, which they are willing to reconstruct by occupying all these countries. Okay, so there are some obstacles, named Israel, named Saudi Arabia, and some others, and they will deal with them. And you know, according to the Quran, there is a verse in the Quran which says, Inna Allah ma'a sabirin. Allah is with those who have patience. And they have a lot of patience, because the Shia waited for 14 centuries since the caliphate was taken from the Shia by the Sunni part of Islam. They want to renew the Shi'i rule over Islam by taking not only Israel and Jordan, by taking Saudi Arabia. And this is the news. They are planning to take Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis are shaking and shivering much more than us Israelis. You know, you hear Israelis, Netanyahu, of course, and many other Israeli officials and officials, and Netanyahu even goes to the American Congress to speak there in spite of the in consent of Obama. And of course, we Jews, because of our culture, because of our past, because of our experience, we shout and we scream whenever we feel some kind of a danger, especially danger of extermination, as we have our dent in our mind which forces us to act in such a way, and good so. However, you don't hear the Saudis talking about this. And the Saudis, believe me, they are shaking and shivering much more than us about Iran. First of all, Iran is right beyond the corner from Saudi Arabia, behind the Persian Gulf. Persian Gulf, what? 80 kilometers wide, 100 kilometers wide. So the short-range missiles of Iran can devastate Saudi Arabia. Secondly, the part of Saudi Arabia which is close to Iran, under the noses of the Iranians, is the oil industry. So they can burn it in no time. It's on rate of decision. They send some missiles to some refineries and the whole thing is burning and the whole Saudi economy goes in drain. So, you know what this means. Okay? They are much more vulnerable. Not only this, the eastern part of Saudi Arabia where the oil is populated by Shia Muslims. And the Shia, usually Iran tries to incite and agitate the Shia in order to destabilize any state. This is what they did in Lebanon, this is what they did in Syria, in Iraq, and in Yemen, of course. Wherever there is a Shia community, they manipulate this community in order to shake the country which they live in. Saudi Arabia is one of those, so they are afraid of this as well. And not only this, the Iranians want to take Mecca and Medina in order to reinstall the Shi'i Caliphate in these cities, the holy cities of Islam. Okay, to renew, l'chadesh yameinu kekedem, to renew the days of the Shi'i Islam as it was in time immemorial. So this is why the Saudis feel, and they write by feeling that they are much more attractive for the Iranians than the Israelis. Israel has some kind of deterrence, especially, theoretically. I don't know, there are all kinds of rumors about what Israel has. 300, 400 nuclear warheads. I personally don't know if Israel has one. But this is what websites copy and paste from each other. So the Iranians know how to read from left to right, and they read already that Israel might have something between 300, 400 nuclear warheads. Okay, so to the state of Israel, they apparently have some kind of a derech eretz, because Israel has some kind of deterrence. Saudi Arabia never had any nuclear program, any real nuclear facility in order to produce anything nuclear or something like this. So they feel very, for good reason, that they are much more vulnerable than the Israelis. But they say nothing. Did you ever hear a Saudi screams and shouts about the Iranians like the Israelis do? No, you never hear it. Why? And here is where culture comes to play. According to the Bedouin Saudi culture, a male, should forever keep calm, cool, keep face. If he, although he could have a very troubled storm in his heart, he should keep poker face. Why? Because if he shows his emotions, and forgive me the ladies, he is viewed like a lady, like a woman. Because a woman shouts and screams whenever she feels something uncomfortable. Okay? A man, according to their culture, should keep his emotions concealed in his heart. That's why they don't show it. But definitely they feel very troubled with this. How do I know? When the JCPOA was signed, the agreement about the Iranian nuclear program was signed in 2015, I tried to read what the Saudis are saying about this. I surfed the newspapers every day to see some op-ed or some article by some emir or one of the ruling family. I saw nothing. Nothing. They reported, cold reportage, but nothing like what they think about this. Until I saw a short article written by a guy named Bandar Ben Sultan. Bandar Ben Sultan is one of the ruling family. He used to be the ambassador of Saudi Arabia in Washington, D.C. for some 30 years. 30 years the man served as ambassador of Saudi Arabia to the United States of America. And he knew the politicians from right and left in America, because during his 30 years, there were many administrations, Democrats, Republicans, many others. So he knew many of them. And when this, like a few days after this agreement was signed in 2015, he wrote a very short article in a website named Ilaf. Ilaf is the first online newspaper in Arabic. It was established in 2001 already. He writes something like this, very short. Whatever we, Saudis, had to say about this agreement, we have already said. Nobody knows where and how. No. Whatever we will have to say in the future, we'll say in the future. However, as for now, I want to say only one thing. Something which the old fox of the American polity once told me. Henry Kissinger, he quotes, Henry Kissinger once told me, America's enemies should fear America. America's friends should fear America even more. This is the end of the article. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing in the Arab discourse worse than this. Nothing. This is the worst thing which an Arab can say about somebody. That his friends should fear him more than his enemies. Because in their mindset, he is a beast. Because beasts sometimes eat their friends before they eat their enemies. It's not, you are not human. That's what he actually tells the Americans. You are worse than beasts. Because you behave in such a way that even your friends cannot rely on you. You know, in Arabic, treason is the worst thing. Khiyana, as they say in Arabic. If you tell us about somebody that he is khain, means somebody who betrayed his tribe, who revealed the secrets of his tribe, the one who acted against his tribe, and he should be, or should get what they call tashmis. Tashmis in Arabic comes from the word shams. Shams in Arabic is shemesh, sun. To send him to the sun means to the desert to die out of dehydration. This is the punishment. Nobody kills him. They send him out so the sun will kill him in big agony. And this is what the punishment of a traitor. Go out to the sun. The sun will take care of you, not we. And this is what he says, Bandar Sultan, in very short, that America's friends should fear America more than its enemies. And if this is the situation, in their view, America is not a state. This is a pariah state which doesn't know how to behave. And this is how the Saudis felt in those days of 2015, thrown under the bus by Obama with a knife in their back after they tried it, after they turned it around in their back. So now, is it wonder that they are now in bed with the Israelis? If they feel so badly betrayed by the Americans, no wonder. One of the Saudi princes once said that Saudi Arabia will go to bed with the devil in order to get his help from the Iranians. With the devil. So Israel is even better because we are not devils. Yeah. Okay? So this is what happens these days. Not only Israel succeeded to impose itself on the Arab neighbors like Egypt and Jordan to make peace with us, we also succeeded to be viewed by other Arab countries, leading countries like the Saudi ones, as not as a problem, but as the solution for much bigger problem as the Iranians are. And this is, in my view, the biggest success of Israel in the geopolitical arena named the Middle East. We are not involved in Syria, thank goodness, and we are not involved in Lebanon. Of course, we have some problems with Hezbollah, But I think that since 2006, they understood, and they are now deterred. And this is what Israel can achieve, deterrence. Of course, we have some problems with Gaza and Hamas, who are deterred usually for a while, then they come out with a new solution until they are deterred again, and then come out with a new solution, and then they're deterred again. And this is how it works with Gaza, with a price of nuisance. But Gaza is no more than nuisance compared to other countries in the Middle East. If I try to sum, Israel is a story of success. Not only success, a success of the Jewish people to return to the land of, to return to Zion, to return to the land of Israel, to a degree that every single Jew in the world can take El Al or take any other company, come to Israel, and the minute that he steps on the Israeli soil, he becomes a citizen. In the same minute, you don't have to wait. Once you are Jew, you have Zchut HaShiva, means Chok HaShvut, means the law of the return. So all the Jews in the world are eligible to go to Israel today and to become Israeli citizens immediately. Not only this, even those who speak English have all kinds of places like Ra'anana, my town, which you can get along with English. Somebody asked me recently, how can I get along with Hebrew in Ra'anana? And there are some places like Bak'a and others, Netanya, where English speakers can feel at home, means in Israel, and yet feel at home from the English point of view. Okay, it takes time. The children means, look, my wife was born in New York. She grew up in Brookline, Massachusetts. She still parks a car in Harvard Yard. But our children refused to speak to her in English in the public sphere, in the street. They always, since the age of 2 or 3, they felt something about the English. The English doesn't belong in here, so here's Hebrew. So a kid, I couldn't believe my eyes. A kid of 2.5 years old speaks the way he speaks to his mother, but she asks him in English and he answers in Hebrew. What did he feel? What did he know? How did he know that he's supposed to speak in Hebrew in Israel? Yes, they get it from the air, from the water. I don't know where from. But kids, before they even went to the gun, from the brothers and sisters. So this is what I mean. The second generation, the third generation, of course, definitely act like Israelis. How do I know? Look, my parents came from Poland. So I'm originally Polish, okay, let's say. My wife came from here, from America. Her mother originally, her family came from Russia, I think, like 100 years ago. And her father, Ziyeke, came from Leipzig. Okay? Now, one of our daughters is married to a boy whose mother is from Herat in Afghanistan, and his father is from Bukhara, all the way to the east. The other daughter is married to another boy whose mother is from Tunisia, and his father is from Marrakesh in Morocco. Okay, how did it happen? Because in Israel you don't think anymore in terms of Polish or American or Russian or Moroccan. In many cases, not everyone. Okay, we have some enclaves of preserving the old loyalties or the old identities, but with the time it evaporates or it dissolves, and the next generation, maybe the next generation, will. And this is what I mean by taking exile out of the Jews. They don't think anymore in terms of exile. They think in terms of to be Israel. And this is, I think, the biggest achievement of the Jewish people, which succeeded to redefine itself as an Israeli nation, or Israeli people, rather than Jewish, or in the exile style. It has the price. Because when Israelis come to here, without being connected to the Jewish community here, they are in a problem. Because their children, if they are immersed in the Canadian or American or other society, in many cases, if they are detached from religion, they, in many cases, marry non-Jews. Yes, we know this. This is a price which we pay for the fact that in Israel, in many cases, not all of them, in many cases, the Israelihood replaced the Jewishness. And this is the price which we pay. Of course, the Israeli religious circles try to preserve both Judaism as a religion and the Israelihood as a nation feeling or nation sentiment and so forth. So it's not easy. It's a matter of debate, matter of court issues, all kinds of things. And we cannot blame anyone in Israel. We don't have any local authorities. We are to be blamed for any shortcoming, while we are those who will harvest the tehillah, the glory for our successes. For example, what happened with the archive of the nuclear program of the Iranians, which, yes, everybody of us should be proud that the Israeli Mossad succeeded to get out from Iran, not with one document, not with two, not with 1 kilo, not with 100 kilo, but with 500 kilos of documents, original documents of the nuclear program of the Iranians. You know, in my feeling, and I spent 25 years in the intelligence, I work with the Mossad, I know exactly how they work. This is a tremendous success. And I'm more than sure that in every state, the local intelligence organizations would pay anything in order to know how the heck those Israelis succeeded to get out from Iran, to empty like 20 safes, to open them quietly, to open like 20 safes quietly, to empty them to a truck in a place which bears no sign, and to know where the place is, and to come in secret to do the job. Who knows how long it takes in order to open peacefully all these safes without sawing them, because sawing means noise, and to load them on truck, this half a ton, you know, it's not a pickup car, and to get out of from Iran. Anyway, what is this? And people never were caught, and until Israel announced it, it didn't leak. And it didn't happen yesterday. So this is a major success. And in my humble view, there are already some filmmakers who are now writing a scenario fiction, but a scenario which is based on this event. And now they try to invent all kinds of tricks and things, how the Mossad worked in order to obtain those documents and that archive of the Iranians. This is a major success. Now, what it means. Not only that what Israel succeeded, what Israel exposed, in order to convince Trump, in order to convince the others, you know, not only Trump in this issue, it's also the British and the French and the Germans, Russians and Chinese, all those who signed this JCPOA. So all of them should take into account what Israel revealed from this archive. However, in my humble view, this event actually will give a blow to the Iranian ruling elite. Why? Now they suspect that there are some moles inside the regime which enabled it. You cannot do such a thing without help from within. Somebody who knew where the archive is, somebody who knew how to open peacefully those safes, somebody who didn't look and didn't see how this truck comes and loads everything and comes out. Somebody who enabled this truck to get out from Iran without being checked, or by bribing somebody, or I don't know how they did it. Means more than one collaborated with the Israelis. And this is something which brings suspicion between people. And an organization cannot work as an organization if people suspect each other that nobody really knows who is the collaborator with the Israelis. And definitely, there was at least one, if not more. This can paralyze organizations, because if they cannot work organized as organization because people suspect each other, this is the end, in my view, or beginning of the end, or continuation of the end of the regime. Why? because apparently those who supported the Israelis in obtaining those documents actually wanted to save themselves. And here I have to remind you of something which happened in our history when Yehoshua, the one who came after Moshe, wanted to enter the Eretz Israel. And he sent 2 spies to spy on Jericho. And these spies went to Rahav to have a room for the night. Okay, the Hotel Rahav in Jericho. Now, Rahav knew that they might have been exposed, so she didn't let them sleep in one of the sleeping rooms which she had. She took them on the roof, the last place which you put people, and she hid them in hay stacks which she had on the roof. Within hay, just imagine to sleep in such a way. And they did. And when in the morning when they left, she asked them to save her and her family when, not if, when the Israelites will occupy the land of Canaan. I mean, she already prepared her own salvation, her own security, and her family. So they made a condition with her that you have to hang this red thread in your window so we know which house you are, and you should collect all your family into your home because we do not want to go around and to look for them. Okay, so this was the condition. But they promised her that when they comes and we come, we will save you, and that's actually why she collaborated with them, because she already felt that the country will fall into the hands of the Israelites. Ladies and gentlemen, those who cooperate with the Israelis in Iran could very possibly act like Rahav. Means to protect themselves from the fate which will meet their fellow Iranians in the government. By supporting the Israelis and maybe getting some promise from the Israelis that because of this support, this help, they will be saved when the day comes. Maybe this. So the human psyche could be the same. Since the day of Rahav in Jericho, in the years of Yeshua, and the days today in Iran. Could be. This is the reason for those people who collaborated with the Israelis to do this. However, and here I'll conclude with this. Very possibly could be that those who collaborated with the Israelis in Iran didn't even know that they are Israelis. Because an Israeli doesn't have to carry an Israeli passport always. He can carry some other passports. Could be Canadian, British. No, British not anymore, because since the days of Margaret Thatcher, the Mossad doesn't use anymore British passports. But there are others in the world. There are many states in the world, so they can hold all kinds of passports. Okay? So those who help the Israelis do it, could be that they thought that they are helping people from Nigeria, or people from Kazakhstan, or from other places. Okay? War is a deception. And yes, the intelligence war is a war of deception. And what can I do? Been there, done that. So this is how it works. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude. Israel is a story of success of the Jewish people. And it can survive forever if Israel will be supported by both Jewish people forever and by other countries as well. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem shows our neighbors that Israel is supported, at least by the United States of America. If all the countries in the world, including Canada, move their embassies to Jerusalem, this will show our neighbors that Israel is supported by Canada and other countries as well. And they should better give peace to Israel, because Israel is invincible, because Israel is supported by countries. This is why moving the embassies, the Canadian included, is a great contribution to peace. Because this is what will convince our neighbors that their war is finished and they failed. And now is the time for peace. And this is why every one of us, and all of you, who has any access to any decision maker in this country, and I really know what happens with the Prime Minister, what he wants, where his heart is. Yes, but עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו. We did not lose the hope, even if politicians are not with us. And if you compare the situation of the Zionist movement 130 years ago only, and what they started from, if they did not have hope, nothing would be achieved. So even when the government sounds negative vis-a-vis moving the embassy, we should try. We should try. אין עליך המלאכה לגמור, ואי אתה רשאי לבטל ממנה. Although you cannot accomplish the job, you are not exempt from the job. And this is how we all should feel when it comes to general issues and particular issues like the moving of the embassy. An article here, a comment there, a post on Facebook here, whatever we can do with our fingerprint, with our fingers, on our keyboard, with our computer, can contribute to change the public opinion in this country in order to convince the politicians. Meetings, phone calls. You know, you have constituencies here. You can call your congressman, you can call your politician, you can tell him. And if you organize, like this organization, Canadian for Israel Legal Rights, many organizations could be, CIJR as well, to start acting on the political arena, on the public arena, in order to convince the other Canadians that in order to promote peace in the Middle East, no, peace between Israel and its neighbors, forget about the Middle East. Middle East is in big problems, other problems, without Israel. But in order to bring peace between Israel and its neighbors, the embassy should move to Jerusalem, because this way you can convince Israel's neighbors that the war is failed and now it's time for peace. Thank you so much.